Hey there, welcome to episode 12 of Knit Talk with a Tech Editor. I'm Megan of the Unapologetic Knitter and I'm a tech editor. And in today's episode, we're going to be talking about how to make modifications below the arms on a garment that we're knitting. We've had all sorts of episodes about collars and sleeves and yoke shaping, so now it's time to talk about what happens below the underarms. So you may notice that I have got a new microphone on today. I've had some feedback about the sound quality of my videos, and I want to thank you for your patience as I've sorted things out. We started recording these episodes on a camera or an iPhone, and the microphone that I purchased was for the camera. As I've upgraded the videos and gone to my DSLR camera, I've had to upgrade the microphone a little bit because the old one didn't work. Who knew that those phone jacks or the earbud jacks behave so differently between technologies? So if you've got feedback about the sound quality of this video after today with this new microphone, let me know. I'm trying really hard to increase the quality of these videos. So if you're anything like me, you may be a little bit pear-shaped. I am quite a bit smaller at the chest than I am at my hips. It's actually about an 8-inch differential. I have a 41-inch full chest circumference and a 49-inch hip circumference. And what that means when it comes to knitting a garment, especially if I'm knitting a straight garment, is that the ease differential between my chest and my hips is pretty significant. That doesn't mean I don't knit straight-bodied sweaters. I absolutely do. Knitting is obviously, well, not in every case, but in most cases, a very stretchy fabric. So it will stretch to accommodate my larger hip circumference. But what it does tend to mean is that I naturally choose a larger garment to accommodate both portions of my body. So I would choose to knit a size with larger ease at the chest so that the ease at the hips is a little bit more comfortable. So using my measurements that I just talked about, 41 inches at the chest and 49 inches at the hips, let's take a look at an example of a straight-bodied sweater and what that means relative to my measurements. So at the chest, because my chest is 41 inches in circumference, and you can see the finished circumference of the sample sweater is 44 inches, I have 3 inches of positive ease, or 7.5 centimeters of positive ease at my chest, meaning the sweater is 3 inches or 7.5 centimeters larger than my actual chest measurement. Now, because the garment is straight, that means that the circumference at the hem where it hits my body is also 44 inches. But because my hips are 49 inches in circumference, I'll have 5 inches of negative ease at my hips, meaning that at the hips, the sweater is 5 inches or 12.5 centimeters smaller than the actual circumference of my body. So this is wearable. I have worn garments of these measurements, but let's talk about how to modify it so that we can get a better fit all the way across our bodies. So for the purposes of this example, we're going to continue to use my body sizes just because it's easy. And what we're going to do is look to add 5 inches to the bottom of the sweater so that the chest circumference stays the same. I would still have 3 inches of positive ease at the chest, but enlarging the bottom of the sweater by 5 inches to get it to 49 inches, which will give me 0 ease at the hips. This still is not as loose, so it's not the same chest ease that I have at the top of the sweater, but it's going to be a lot more comfortable. You could certainly increase the ease to make it so that you have, or increase the circumference so that you have the same amount of ease at your hips that you have at your chest. But as I mentioned earlier, because knitting is quite stretchy, it's not likely you need to add quite that much shaping. So the methods that I'm going to be talking about today are twofold, and they can be used either in the top-down construction or in a bottom-up construction. You'll simply be increasing stitches if you're working top down or decreasing stitches if you're working body up. So for the purposes of this example, we're going to say our gauge is 25 stitches and 32 rows over 4 inches or 10 centimeters. So if we want to add 5 inches to the circumference of the body of the sweater, that means we need to add roughly 32 stitches. This number is important because one of the two methods that I'm going to talk to you today talk to you through today, I should say, really relies on stitch counts increasing in multiples of 4. So that's why we're going to use this example. The other thing to consider is since the body length is 13 inches or 33 centimeters according to the schematic, and that length is measured from the underarm to before the ribbing starts, because we want to make sure all of our shaping is complete before the ribbing is done. Based on our row gauge, that means we will have 104 rows over which to work the shaping from the underarm to just before the hem. So those are our target numbers. So the first method that I want to walk through with you today is what I call the side seam shaping. This is a case, and you can see on the screen, I've got it highlighted in red dashes, where we're going to be increasing an even number of stitches up each edge of the garment at the approximate location of a side seam. Now, your garment may not in fact have seams, but you can approximate the location by finding the center of the underarm and going straight down from there. In the case of this method, this is where the 4 stitches increased on any given increase rounds matters. You want your shaping to be even, and you're going to be increasing on either side of the left side seam and the right side seam. In most cases when you're working a sweater like this, one of the 2 side seam locations is the beginning of round. However, that's not guaranteed. So if your beginning of round marker is not at one of the side seams, you'll just want to count your stitches and find the approximate location of where those side seams would be and place markers at both of those locations to make it a lot easier. So since we need to increase a total of 32 stitches from the underarms to the hem, or the hem to the underarm, depending if you're working top down or bottom up, we know we need to increase or have 8 increase rounds. We take our total number of stitches, which is 32, and divide it by 4, because we increase in multiples of 4 on any increase round, and we get 8. Since we have 104 rounds total down the entire length of the body, and we need to work 8 shaping rounds, we can now determine the spacing of our increase rounds to make it as even as possible up the length of the body. Because we're going to have 8 shaping rounds, that basically means we've got 9 sections of shaping, right? Each knit even followed by a decrease or increase round is going to be 1 section, and there will be a section of knitting even either before the first decrease or increase or after the last increase or decrease to make sure that the decreases are spaced out evenly. So essentially, we're going to take our 104 rounds and divide it by 9, because we have 9 sections up the body of the sweater, and this works out to be around 11 and a half. Since we can't work half a round between our decreases, we're going to round our spacing down to 11, and because one of those rounds will be the decrease rounds, we will have 10 rounds between each of our 8 decrease rounds. We will also have 13 rounds above the first decrease and after the last decrease to make sure the spacing is consistent. So essentially what you're going to be doing, whether you're working top down or bottom up, is knitting 13 rounds even, and then you're going to begin the shaping repeats of 1 increase round or decrease round, followed by 10 even rounds. Even rounds just meaning that there is no increases or decreases on that round. You're going to work that 7 times to use up 77 rounds in addition to the 13 that you've already worked. So we've got 90 rounds total. And then we're going to work 1 final increase or decrease round, the 8th one, and knit 13 more rounds even, which is 14 more rounds. So overall, we've used all 104 rounds and have the most even spacing we could have throughout the body so that the shaping is nice and consistent. So the second method of shaping is what I call concentric shaping, because you're going to be working your shaping in rounds around the body as opposed to at the side seams. This is a method that mimics very closely the shaping that you work in a circular yoke style sweater. So you're not going to be held to increasing just 2 stitches at each edge, but rather you can space out more stitches increased or decreased across the round. And I'm showing you this here, but it would actually be on the body of the sweater. So all of the numbers from the previous example remain. So we still have to increase 32 stitches, and we still have 104 rounds over which we can work these increase rounds. So for the purposes of this example, I've decided that we're going to work our increases over just 2 rounds, which means that we'll have 3 sections. So you'll have a knit even, an increase round, some even knitting, your second increase round, and the final and third section will be some even after the final increase or decrease rounds. So unlike the previous example where we increased or decreased at the same rate on every shaping round, as the stitch counts change on the body, whether you're increasing or decreasing stitches, the instructions will change accordingly. So for more information about increasing a set number of stitches across a round or decreasing, you can check out episode 4 of Knit Talk and skip ahead to about the 12-minute and 20-second mark of the video. That's where I give you the math on how to break down spacing your shaping across a round and using up the maximum amount of stitches so you don't have any weird gaps. And in the description below that particular episode, I have actual math on how to do that. It's not just verbal. And that's pretty much it. Those are our 2 options for body shaping, either top down or bottom up. If you have any questions about either of these methods, please feel free to leave a question in the comments below the video. And please remember also that if you are working a textural or a colorwork sweater, one or the other method of these might work better for you. If you're working a fairly simple sweater, whether it's stockinette stitch or a very small textural repeat where you can follow the increases easily and modify the texture for it, you may find that the tapered method or method 1 is a lot easier for you to use. If you're working complex color work or a more complex textured pattern, you may find that if you have even rounds within your textural color work or texture or color work, that the concentric method works better for you. I do think that if you're working a plain stockinette stitch garment, the concentric method will probably be more visible. So I think it would be better for color work or textural work so that you can sort of hide those multiple increases across the round. But either method will truly get you there. So that's it for today's episode. Coming this Sunday, we've got another Sunday special, and I'm going to be talking about standard garment lengths. I've got lots of visuals both on me and drawn, so I hope you'll enjoy that. And as I've mentioned in previous episodes, because we do talk so much about sweater modifications, I can just about guarantee there are some people here who are looking to knit their first sweater, but just haven't taken the plunge yet. I've got a free resource for you to help you knit your very first sweater. If you head over to unapologeticknitter.com/MFS, as in my first sweater, you can download that free guide, get lots of tips on knitting your first sweater, and I think you'll find there's a little freebie in there to get you going. And as I've mentioned the last couple of weeks, if you find value in my videos, I would really appreciate it if you would not only like this video, but to subscribe to my channel. Not only do you get notifications each time a new video is released, but it lets the YouTube algorithms know that I'm doing something useful, and it'll help refer these videos to other viewers. If you have future discussion ideas for topics that you'd like to see covered, there's a link to a submission form below the video that you can send in, and we can make sure we get you in the queue. I love seeing your ideas. It helps me be creative every week. Thank you so much for being here. I hope you enjoyed this little lesson. Be sure to let me know what you think about the new sound quality, and happy knitting.